Most people don't fail because they lack talent or intelligence. They fail because they spend their entire lives almost committing, almost focused, almost disciplined, almost serious. You're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because you keep giving your attention to things that don't deserve it, and then wondering why nothing changes. The truth is uncomfortable. If your life feels stagnant, it's because you've trained yourself to live without urgency. 2026 isn't a fresh start. It's a deadline, and whether you like it or not, it will expose exactly how much of your time you wasted pretending to be busy. Locking in isn't about motivation or intensity. It's about removing the constant negotiations you have with yourself every day, negotiations you keep losing. Every distraction you tolerate, every half-effort you excuse, every time you delay what matters most, you reinforce the same outcome. More noise, less progress. This isn't a video for people who want to feel inspired for 15 minutes. It's for people who are tired of lying to themselves about why they're not where they want to be. Because once you see how fragmented your focus really is, once you recognize how much energy you leak just trying to stay comfortable, you can't unsee it. And that's when things get dangerous. Not exciting, not easy, dangerous. Because clarity doesn't motivate you. It forces you. But here's the part most people miss, and it's why nothing sticks. Distraction isn't your real problem. Motivation isn't either. There's something more subtle quietly breaking your focus every single day, something so normal you probably don't even notice it anymore. And until you identify that one thing, no system, no habit, no discipline will save you. That's what we need to talk about first. You're not distracted in the way you think. Distraction implies something external pulling you away, something sudden, something you could avoid if you tried harder. That's not what's happening. What's happening is fragmentation. Your attention isn't being stolen, it's being divided willingly, slowly, every single day. Too many inputs, too many roles, too many half-decisions competing for the same mental space. And the more fragmented you become, the harder it feels to focus on anything that actually matters. Fragmentation doesn't feel chaotic. That's why it's dangerous. It feels normal, checking one more thing, responding to one more message, keeping one more option open just in case. None of it feels destructive in isolation, but together, it creates a mind that never fully commits. You sit down to work, but part of you is elsewhere. You make plans, but you leave yourself an exit. You start, but you never arrive. Not because you're incapable, but because your attention is constantly split between who you are now and who you might become. This is why forcing discipline doesn't work. You can't concentrate your way out of fragmentation. You can't outwork a divided mind. Every time you try to push through, you burn energy just holding yourself together. And over time, that exhaustion becomes your baseline. You tell yourself you're tired, unmotivated, or burned out. But what you're really experiencing is the cost of never being fully present anywhere. Fragmentation also explains something most people don't like to admit: why clarity feels uncomfortable. When your attention is scattered, you always have an excuse. When it isn't, you're forced to confront what you've been avoiding. That's why staying fragmented feels safer. It keeps pressure low. It keeps expectations blurred. It lets you stay busy without being accountable to progress. And here's the part that should bother you. Fragmentation isn't caused by chaos, it's caused by permission. Everything that divides your focus exists in your life because at some point, you allowed it to stay. You said yes. You didn't set a boundary. You didn't cut it when you should have. Which means locking in doesn't start with effort. It starts with subtraction. But subtraction is where most people freeze. Because the moment you begin removing things, you realize something uncomfortable. The biggest drains on your focus aren't random. They're familiar. They're things you've normalized. Things you've told yourself you need, even though they quietly control you. And until you're willing to look at what you haven't cut yet, fragmentation will keep winning, no matter how badly you want to change. That's what we need to confront next. Focus doesn't disappear on its own. It gets traded away. Every distraction that still exists in your life is there because at some point, you decided it was acceptable. Not important, acceptable. That distinction matters, because the things controlling your attention aren't always urgent or valuable. They're just familiar, comfortable, easy to justify, and the longer they stay, the more authority they gain over your time and energy. Most people think cutting things is extreme. They tell themselves they'll manage better, optimize later, or balance everything eventually. But balance is a story you tell yourself when you don't want to make a decision. Because real focus requires choosing what doesn't get access to you anymore. Not someday, not gradually, now. And that's uncomfortable because cutting things forces you to admit that some parts of your life are no longer aligned with where you say you want to go. Here's the part people avoid. It's rarely the obvious distractions that do the most damage. It's the ones that feel productive, social, or harmless. The conversations that go nowhere. The content that keeps you informed but never moves you forward. The goals you keep around because letting them go would mean admitting you've changed. None of these things are evil, but together they dilute you. They keep you mentally occupied while quietly draining the intensity required to make real progress. This is why locking in feels lonely at first. When you start cutting, you create space, silence, fewer inputs, and in that space, you lose the constant validation of being busy. No notifications telling you you're needed. No noise disguising the fact that now, the responsibility is yours. That's when most people panic and fill the space back up again. Not because they can't handle focus, but because focus removes their excuses. Understand this clearly. If something consistently pulls you away from what matters most, and you refuse to remove it, you've already chosen the outcome. You don't drift accidentally. You drift because you didn't want to confront the cost of staying comfortable. Every uncut distraction is a silent agreement to remain exactly where you are. But even when people finally start cutting, when they remove the noise, limit the inputs, and reclaim time, something strange happens. They still don't fully lock in. The environment improves, the schedule clears, yet resistance remains. Because the deepest distraction isn't external at all. It's internal. And it's the reason your own mind pushes back the moment things start getting serious. Once the noise is reduced and the distractions are cut, most people expect focus to feel natural. It doesn't. What they feel instead is resistance. A subtle pull to check something, to shift tasks, to delay starting. And that resistance doesn't come from laziness or lack of discipline. It comes from a part of you that has learned to associate focus with pressure, exposure, and risk. When you fully lock in, there's nowhere to hide. No scrolling to soften the discomfort. No background noise to dilute responsibility. Focus removes the buffer between you and the outcome. And for the mind, that feels threatening, because now effort might actually lead somewhere. And if it doesn't, you can't blame distractions anymore. That's why your own thoughts start negotiating the moment you get serious. Not because you're weak, but because certainty is heavier than comfort. This is also why procrastination feels oddly protective. It keeps the future vague. As long as things aren't fully defined, failure stays hypothetical. The moment you commit, the outcome becomes real. And real outcomes carry judgment, both from others and from yourself. So the mind resists by creating friction. You feel tired, unclear, unmotivated, but what you're really experiencing is your identity pushing back against change. Understand this. Focus threatens the version of you that survives by staying flexible, non-committal, and adaptable. Locking in demands a different identity, one that accepts limits, chooses a direction, and lives with consequences. That transition is uncomfortable because it requires letting go of the safety net of potential. Potential feels good. It doesn't require proof. Focus does. This is where most people sabotage themselves. Not by quitting outright, but by softening their commitment just enough to stay comfortable. They tell themselves they're still trying, still improving, still on the path. But deep down, they know they're avoiding the one thing that would actually force change, non-negotiable structure. And here's the twist most people never see. The solution to this resistance isn't more motivation. It isn't mindset tricks or willpower. In fact, trying harder often makes it worse. The real shift comes from removing choice altogether. And that's where everything changes. The biggest mistake people make when trying to focus is turning every day into a decision. What to work on, when to start, how hard to push. That constant choice is exhausting, and exhaustion always wins. Locked-in people don't have stronger willpower, they have fewer negotiations. They remove choice from the equation before resistance even shows up. Locking in doesn't mean doing everything. It means choosing one direction and refusing to argue with it. One priority that dictates how your time, energy, and attention are arranged. Not because it's easy or inspiring, but because it's necessary. The moment you allow multiple directions to compete, focus collapses. You may stay busy, but progress slows to a crawl. This is where structure becomes essential. Same time, same place, same minimum standard. Not because routine is magical, but because consistency neutralizes emotion. When the environment stays stable, the mind stops looking for escape routes. You don't wait to feel ready. You don't check your mood. You show up because that's what the system demands, not what motivation allows. Most people resist this because it feels restrictive. They want freedom, but freedom without structure leads to drift. And drift is expensive. It costs years. Non-negotiable structure, on the other hand, creates momentum. Not explosive momentum, quiet, compounding momentum that builds without asking for your opinion. Here's the important part. Locking in isn't about intensity. It's about minimum standards you never violate. You don't aim for perfect days. You aim for unbroken chains. When things are defined clearly enough, progress becomes boring. And boring is powerful because it doesn't rely on excitement to continue. But even with structure in place, even when the direction is clear, life still interferes. Days break. Energy drops. Plans fail. And this is where most people undo everything they've built. Not because they can't handle success, but because they don't know how to recover from disruption. What matters isn't whether you fall off. It's how fast you return. And that's the difference between locking in temporarily and locking in for real. No one locks in perfectly. That expectation alone has ruined more progress than distraction ever could. What breaks most people isn't missing a day. It's what they tell themselves after they miss it. The moment structure cracks, the mind rushes in with judgment. You tell yourself you've failed, that you've lost momentum, that you'll start again properly next week. And in that pause, everything collapses. The truth is simpler and harsher. Progress doesn't disappear when you fall off. It disappears when you hesitate to return. Momentum isn't built by never breaking your routine. It's built by shortening the distance between disruption and recommitment. 1 missed day is friction. 2 missed days is drift. 3 missed days becomes identity again. Most people wait to feel back on track before restarting. That feeling never comes. Locked-in people restart while still frustrated, still tired, still disappointed in themselves. They don't negotiate with the emotional state. They return to the structure because that's the rule. And over time, this teaches the nervous system something critical. Slipping doesn't mean stopping. This is where all-or-nothing thinking quietly destroys years of effort. You either perform perfectly or you quit entirely. That mindset feels disciplined, but it's actually fragile. Real discipline is resilient. It absorbs impact and continues. It doesn't dramatize failure. It treats it as noise. Here's what most people don't realize. Every time you return quickly after falling off, you strengthen something deeper than habit. You build trust with yourself. Not confidence. Trust. The kind that says, even when things break, I don't abandon myself. That trust compounds faster than motivation ever could. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If returning is what matters most, why do so many people still repeat the same cycles year after year? Why do they restart again and again, but never stabilize? Because structure and recovery aren't enough on their own. If you don't change how you see yourself, you'll always drift back to who you were. And that's the final shift most people never make. Most people treat focus like a phase. Something they enter when life allows it and exit when things get difficult. That's why it never lasts. You can't sustain behavior that isn't supported by identity. Eventually, you drift back to the version of yourself that feels familiar, even if that version keeps you stuck. Locking in for real requires a quieter decision. Not, I'm trying to focus, but this is how I live now. That shift removes drama. You stop asking whether you feel like showing up. You stop measuring days by motivation. You stop expecting discipline to feel exciting. It becomes ordinary. And ordinary is powerful because it doesn't require energy to maintain. This is where most people get uncomfortable. They like the idea of change, but not the permanence of it. Because permanence means letting go of the old self-image. The one that had unlimited potential, endless options, and no clear direction yet. Focus collapses possibility into reality. And reality demands consistency, not imagination. When identity changes, effort decreases. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. The behavior makes sense. You're not locking in to prove something. You're locking in because that's who you are. And when setbacks happen, and they will, they don't trigger a crisis. They trigger a correction. The system holds because the identity underneath it does. Here's the part people misunderstand. This shift isn't loud. There's no announcement. No visible transformation at first. In fact, from the outside, it often looks like nothing is happening. Fewer words, fewer reactions, less explanation, more follow-through. The change is internal before it's visible. And this is where everything quietly converges. Fragmentation fades. Cutting becomes automatic. Structure holds. Recovery speeds up. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop arguing with it. But there's still one final misconception that needs to be dismantled. One idea that causes people to romanticize locking in and then abandon it when it doesn't feel the way they expected. Because locking in isn't intense. It's quiet. And until you understand what that actually means, you'll keep looking for the wrong signals that you're on the right path. That's what we need to end with. Most people expect locking in to feel intense. Like a surge of motivation, a burst of clarity, a dramatic internal shift. That expectation is what causes them to miss it when it actually happens. Locking in doesn't arrive with energy. It arrives with calm. With fewer thoughts, fewer decisions, fewer emotional swings. It feels almost underwhelming at first, because there's nothing to react to anymore. When you lock in, days start to look similar. Not boring in a negative way, predictable in a stabilizing way. You stop chasing momentum and start accumulating it. Progress becomes quieter, less visible, but more real. You don't need to announce what you're doing, because the work no longer depends on being seen. It depends on being repeated. This is why so many people abandon focus too early. They mistake silence for stagnation. They expect excitement as proof that something is working. But excitement fades. What replaces it, if you let it, is trust. Trust that showing up consistently matters more than how it feels. Trust that small returns compound even when nothing dramatic is happening. Trust that time is finally working with you instead of against you. Locking in for 2026 doesn't mean everything changes overnight. It means you stop drifting. You stop renegotiating your priorities every week. You stop resetting your goals every time life disrupts you. You move in one direction long enough for momentum to become unavoidable. And eventually something shifts. Not in your emotions, but in your position. You look back and realize you didn't need a breakthrough. You needed stability. You needed fewer distractions, fewer excuses, fewer versions of yourself competing for control. That's the mental reset. Not motivation, not intensity, not hype, just clarity, repeated long enough to matter. If this resonated, stay. We build focus here, quietly, consistently, without noise. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Because locking in isn't for everyone. It's for the people who are done drifting.